Thank you very much for attending the AGM of Atheist Ireland. For today's session, what we'll be doing is, first of all, have some brief reports on our activities during the year. Then we'll have Q&A, election of officers, and in the afternoon we'll be launching this book, which is called Is My Family Odd About Gods? It's a book about freedom of religion and belief for children. It's not asking children to believe what we're saying. In fact, it starts off by saying don't believe anything in this simply because it's in this book. It's encouraging children to find out themselves what is the most reliable way of understanding what's likely to be true about reality and about morality. So we'll start off by going through the reports from the officers, and I'll start off with an overview from the perspective of myself as chairperson. We're now beginning our 10th year in existence as Atheist Ireland, and when we started, our first task was very basically, it was simply to normalise the use of the words atheist and secular in discourse in Ireland, because that wasn't the case at the time. It was typically used as either an insult or as some sort of a joke in Parliament and in the media. But we've succeeded in doing this now, and we now regularly address Oireachtas committees, constitutional conventions. We lobby TDs in Ireland, we lobby the government, we also lobby the United Nations and the Council of Europe and the OSCE and various international human rights oversight bodies. The census results have recently shown that 1 in 10 people in Ireland are non-religious. More people now have no religion than all of the non-Catholic minority religions combined, and we think that even those figures overestimate the strength of religion in Ireland, and we have made proposals to the CSO to revise the question in the next census to get a more accurate estimate of how many people actually practice religion, as opposed to put it down on the form out of habit. We're continuing to campaign for a state-funded education system that's secular, that's based on human rights, and that has no privilege for any religious institution. And also that it's no privileges for atheism. We would be just as opposed to a state education system that promotes atheism as we are to a state education system that promotes religion. And this afternoon we'll be launching that book that I was telling you about a few moments ago. We also continue to lobby the Irish government to protect very fundamental human rights of atheists and minority faith citizens, and that they include freedom of thought, religion and belief, freedom from discrimination, equality before the law, the right to an effective remedy if your rights are breached. They're very fundamental rights, and they're ones that we find when we're going abroad are recognised as fundamental, yet here in Ireland we somehow seem to have to almost start as if we have to negotiate those rather than taking them as a given. We're pleased that after years of lobbying, the government has finally announced that they will be holding a referendum to remove the blasphemy law, and also a referendum on abortion, which are two of the issues that we've been campaigning on. So assuming that this government stays in power long enough to deliver on that, we will be campaigning on those issues. We remain part of the campaign to repeal the 8th Amendment, and we've also this year joined the National Women's Council of Ireland, because there's a lot of overlap in some of the issues that we work on. We're also continuing to lobby internationally at the United Nations, at the OSCE, at the Council of Europe, and we work with Atheist Alliance International, which we've been members of since we were founded. We've also this year joined the International Humanist and Ethical Union, so we're now members of both of the major international non-religious lobby groups. And we work on both of those areas. That they will help to support us in terms of campaigning for our rights here, but also it enables us to help people in theocracies where it's more dangerous to campaign for issues than it is here. It enables us to help those in their work as well. We continue to work while promoting atheism ourselves. We continue to promote secularism alongside religious groups who also support secularism, and in particular the Evangelical Alliance of Ireland and the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community of Ireland. Both of those are groups that have very different worldviews to us, but they are also both discriminated against, and they also both support separation of church and state. So we work alongside those on those two issues, and the three of us this year went together to the United Nations when the United Nations Human Rights Committee was questioning Pakistan on its human rights record, and we spoke on behalf of atheists and Ahmadi Muslims and Christians and other minority faith members in Pakistan who are persecuted there but for obvious reasons can't speak out themselves, so we went there to speak out on their behalf. And I'd like to just finish by thanking our committee members for the countless hours of hard work that they've all put in during the year. We sometimes describe our work as having all of the attributes of a full-time job apart from the salary. And I would also like to thank everybody who is members of Atheist Ireland, those of you here and those that couldn't make it here today, for helping to make our work possible, particularly our constituency coordinators and local regional officers, and everybody here. We've been here now for 9 years. Everybody should be proud of what you've done to help to bring about a more ethical secular Ireland and a more ethical secular world. Now, I'm quite optimistic that we will make breakthroughs on major breakthroughs in secularism in Ireland. The world is becoming more secular. The work of the World Values Survey and other resources show that around the world, at different speeds in different places, the world is becoming more secular. I think that it won't happen as incrementally as some people think it might. I think it'll be more like the fall of the Berlin Wall. I think there just will be pressure that will build up, and eventually there will be a series of just very substantial changes that will happen quite quickly. Now, I don't know what will trigger those changes. It probably won't be something that we do, but whenever that happens, all of the work that we have been doing will become retrospectively useful in trying to bring about structural changes to enable that secularism to work in Ireland. So, as I say, I have no idea when those changes will happen, but hopefully there will be some of them before this time next year, when we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary. So I'll pass over now to Jane Donnelly, who's our Human Rights Officer, to give a brief report on some of the work that we've been doing in that area.
Okay, I won't be long, I won't bore you too much, just a short few things. We had a very busy year last year, especially on the human rights issues, and today I'm going to focus on our campaign for secular education and our international work. The education system took up most of our time. After years of robust lobbying, the government seems to be finally addressing the issue of religious discrimination in schools. However, it is doing so by proposing the smallest changes that it can get away with, but we continue to campaign for fundamental reform on the four equally important issues of patronage, access, curriculum and teaching. The Minister for Education is now promoting the community national schools. They're run by the Education and Training Boards. They're the old VEC schools. He's proposing those at primary level. That's his preferred alternative when he wants to add some multi-denominational schools. There's no talk of him opening, or any patron body opening up non-denominational schools at this stage. Atheist Ireland has revealed through documents that we got under the Freedom of Information Act, this is just our recent campaign, that all ETB schools at second level are promoting the Christian, mainly Catholic ethos, even though they are directly run by the state. We will talk about more that if you want to ask questions on that, and we will be revealing more of those documents in the coming weeks as we get them. We've got 2 batches of documents now, and there's another one coming in next week. So we're working really hard on that, because there's a lot of issues that as you know, we had to crowdfund and money and deposits and extra time under the FOI Act and all those things that you have to keep going back to them all the time. And there's 7 ETBs now. We've gone for Cork as well, ETB. So there's 7 ETBs altogether that we've gone for records on, and we just have to keep on top of it. And then when you get the documents, you spend hours reading them, half the night. They might be boring to everybody else, but myself and John find them fascinating. But there's stuff in there that even I, after all these years, I'm surprised at. I can't believe it. I addressed on behalf of Atheist Ireland, the Ahmadi Muslims and the Evangelicals, the Oireachtas Joint Committee on Education about the Admissions to Schools Bill. It was the first time the Oireachtas Committee has been jointly addressed by this unique alliance of the three groups, and that was really interesting. We are still publishing an analysis of different aspects of the education system on our website, Teach Don't Preach, and it's become a resource for a lot of people, and I've still a lot of work to do on it, and it's endless work, but we do hear from academics and people that are doing research, and a lot of people like that are using it. And recently somebody told us that he's doing some research, and he was searching for information for ages, and then he came across Teach Don't Preach, and everything that he wanted, absolutely everything that he wanted, was in there, buried in there somewhere, but he found it. So we were fascinated, was he able to find the information easily enough using the website, so we got a lot of feedback on that. And so we're delighted with that as the years have gone by, we have put so much information and documents that sometimes people talk about the education system and they don't know how it works and what are the legal documents and the things that apply to it. But we have them all, and they're all on that. And still, as time goes on, we find more information on the history of how it was set up and how people view it, where it's not necessarily legally valid how they view it. So we keep putting that stuff up. Internationally this year, Atheist Ireland and the Ahmadi Muslims and the Evangelical Alliance, as Michael mentioned there, we went to the United Nations Human Rights Committee in Geneva about the persecution of the three groups in Pakistan. And as you know, there are people in Ireland in the asylum process that are atheists that have fleeing from Pakistan. The same with different groups. The Ahmadis are persecuted in Pakistan, and so are the evangelical Christians. But when we were there, we found ourselves in the unique position there because of what we were doing, that we were raising the issue of underage marriage, because they marry off Christian girls and are kidnapped to Muslims or whatever in Pakistan. So it was one of the areas that we raised in the middle of all our areas, and that the UN asked us at the private meeting, they asked us questions on that, and it's fascinating to bring all of that and to look into the background of all that. But there's a lot of young girls that are kidnapped in Pakistan from different families, and they're converted and married off, and our work kind of slipped into that remit there because of being with the three groups, and I found out a lot more about that through the Evangelical Alliance, that there is a big issue with girls from Christian families being kidnapped and that kind of issue. So all those things, and blasphemy, and we raised, and it was very hard work when we were there, but it really was really good. And then Michael and I both spoke about freedom of expression and the abortion laws in Ireland at a conference hosted by the Polish Atheist Foundation in Warsaw, and Michael accepted an award as International Atheist of the Year. And when you go to another country and explain the influence of the Catholic Church, now Poland is sometimes like us because the Catholic Church has a huge influence, but some of the details of ours, even they get a bit shocked with that when we go into it in detail. We also spoke at an international conference in London about freedom of conscience and freedom of expression, and that was Marianne Namazi's conference, and I found that very moving, I have to say. I really found that very moving, and some ex-Muslims there. It was an eye-opener for me, I have to say. I mean, I knew a lot of the stuff, but you know, when you're in front of somebody that's been persecuted because they're an ex-Muslim and they're speaking from the heart, I found it very moving, and that their families reject them as well. So it was pretty moving. And then we also attended the annual gathering in Britain of 30,000 Ahmadi Muslims from around the world. It was a huge conference, and it was a different experience for us there. Atheist Ireland we have joined the International Humanist and Ethical Union, which I'm delighted about that, and we still remain members of Atheist Alliance International. The IHEU does a lot of international work on human rights, and they're well up on the EU law, and for some areas like the European Social Charter, if you wanted to make a complaint under that, you have to be registered with the Council of Europe. Now, an organisation like ours cannot be registered because we're too small, but if you're a big organisation like the IHEU, they're registered with the Council of Europe. So the complaints mechanism, say under the Social Charter, you go through that. This is what you have to do. So we're looking, and that maybe that's for if you want to ask questions and things like that. We're looking into the area which we've developed, and we're the only organisation that has developed it, about sex education in school, relationship and sex education in schools. And we were successful in getting a recommendation for the UN. The first recommendation on sex ed in schools came about because we focused on that in one of our submissions, because the sex ed in schools goes through the ethos of the schools, and most of them are Catholic. And a few people have sent me the relationship and sexuality policies of schools and ETB schools, state schools, recently, because we're doing this work, and they're actually more fundamentalist Catholic than some of the Catholic ones I've seen on the Catholic schools, you know what I mean? So there's a huge issue there. It's not just about religion in schools. That ethos goes through the relationship and sexuality, and it affects LGBT, as well as the abortion issue, and contraception, and sex outside marriage. All that area is mentioned in a particular policy in an ETB school. So we're working on that. We're going to work on that and focus on that a lot more, and we've got some good ideas about what we're going to do, move forward on that. And that's it.
Okay, thank you,
Sit
Jen.
down.